There is a point you realize you aren't actually healing. You are performing recovery, acting okay just to keep the people around you comfortable. It looks like smiling when you're exhausted, laughing at jokes in the office, and reflexively saying, "I'm fine," just so no one has to look at the mess. Showing up like nothing happened while you're quietly bleeding inside means you're surviving on mute. This state heavily taxes your internal resources without offering any actual path to recovery. The challenge is figuring out how to stop this drain and build genuine resilience without turning into someone who is completely isolated or aggressively cold. Real healing bypasses the need for an audience or a flawless glow-up. It requires a ruthless, unapologetic reallocation of your emotional bandwidth away from other people's expectations and back to your own baseline. To make that shift, we must stop treating emotional bandwidth as a limitless feeling and start treating it as a strictly finite currency. This chart shows what happens when you don't protect that currency. We call this the performative drain, tracking available mental bandwidth over time. Notice the sharp drop. Spending energy explaining choices, managing perceptions, or begging for closure actively withdraws from your reserves. The alternative is strategic detachment. Instead of paying out your energy to correct misunderstandings or prove your worth, you keep that currency in the bank to fund your own long-term emotional stability. Becoming unbreakable means you stop checking to see who is watching your progress. You focus entirely on managing your internal resources. One of the fastest ways to bankrupt those internal resources is by chasing a universally accepted but highly flawed coping mechanism, external closure. We evaluate this using the engagement matrix. The vertical axis is emotional return on investment. The horizontal axis tracks energy spent. Look where demanding an apology lands. Seeking closure requires high energy, but yields a sharply negative return. Waiting for an explanation that will never come keeps you mentally tied to the past. It makes your internal peace entirely dependent on a third party who likely doesn't care. To fix this leak in your energy, you have to make a hard trade-off. You must willingly surrender the desire for a satisfying, symmetrical ending to the story. Think of closure as an internal boundary you enforce. You decide the story is over the moment you stop rereading a chapter that already taught you the lesson. This brings us to how you handle deliberate rumors, twisted narratives, and outright criticism from others. The most efficient input here is silent detachment. This means you stop writing essays to defend your character, you withhold explanations for your boundaries, and you let people build whatever version of you fits their comfort. Let's plot this new strategy on our matrix. Silent detachment sits squarely in the zone of low energy expenditure and high emotional ROI. By refusing to audition for people who aren't qualified to judge you, you drastically conserve your mental bandwidth. It also acts as an automatic filter, quietly removing relationships built on conditional respect. But there is a severe social cost. People will call you cold or distant. To maintain this stance, you have to sacrifice the easy dopamine hit of being universally liked. By letting a misunderstanding stand without correction, you prioritize self-respect over social validation. This silence communicates that your energy is too expensive to spend on resentment. When you strip away performative relationships and stop filling every silence with a distraction, you will experience a sudden, often uncomfortable, increase in solitude. Modern hustle culture insists that an empty calendar means you are falling behind. It frames rest, silence, and being alone as symptoms of failure. Reframe that sudden quiet. Loneliness serves as a necessary season of preparation, a time where life clears the room before your next chapter begins. Mechanically, this solitude is how you regenerate cognitive power. When you stop running your mind on fumes to please others, your intuition and strategic thinking finally have the space to return. The trade-off here is steep. You have to abandon the safety net of external validation and push through the initial anxiety of sitting alone in an empty room. Unbreakable individuals don't burn out because they don't view rest as a weakness. They treat stillness and solitude as strategic assets that allow them to outlast the chaos. So, how do you apply this in real time? How do you actually decide when a conflict deserves a response and when you should just walk away? We map this decision using the engagement filter. It starts anytime you encounter a trigger, like being misunderstood or facing direct opposition. Instead of reacting, you ask one critical diagnostic question. Does this person's opinion actually impact my tangible goals? The path splits strictly based on the answer. If the answer is no, you execute silent detachment and walk away. If the answer is yes, you deliver the necessary facts, but completely remove your emotional investment from the exchange. This filter strips away the emotional reactivity. It takes a perceived personal attack and turns it into a simple, manageable logistical decision. This framework is highly effective for chronic people pleasers and anyone whose productivity is currently paralyzed by worrying about external opinions. But there is a vital warning. You cannot use detachment as a shield to avoid taking accountability for your own toxic behavior. Protecting your peace is about conserving energy against bad faith attacks. It is not an excuse to stonewall necessary communication within healthy reciprocal relationships. True resilience, the state of being unbreakable, is the steadfast refusal to misspend your energy rebuilding a comfortable facade for someone else. Peace functions as a premium asset you must rigorously protect. You do this by refusing to audition for rooms you don't even want to be in.